In late 2023, Sony sent a notification to PlayStation users. It wasn't about a new game. It wasn't a sale. It told them that over 1,300 movies and TV shows they had paid for, some for years, would be deleted from their accounts on December 31st. No refund. No warning months in advance. Just gone. People were furious, but Sony's response was simple. You never owned those films. You bought a license, and that license just expired. Here's the thing. Sony was right. Legally, technically, contractually, completely right. And that's exactly the problem. Because what happened to those PlayStation users wasn't a bug in the system. It was the system working exactly as designed. And once you see how deep that design goes, you'll never look at your monthly bills the same way again. So let's start with the obvious question. When did buying something stop meaning you own it? Most people would say, recently. Streaming happened. Apps replaced discs. The cloud replaced hard drives. Convenience took over. That's the story we were sold. And it's not wrong, but it's incomplete. Because the shift away from ownership wasn't driven by what consumers wanted. It was driven by something much more specific: money. And the way Wall Street decided to count it. To understand this, you have to understand one number: the valuation multiple. When investors decide what a company is worth, they don't just look at how much money it makes today. They look at how predictable that money is. A company that earns $100 million once is worth less to an investor than a company that earns $50 million every single year, reliably, automatically, from customers who pay without being resold. That second kind of revenue has a name: recurring revenue, and Wall Street rewards it dramatically. Public SaaS companies, software businesses built entirely on subscriptions, trade at roughly 6 to 8 times their annual revenue. Traditional software companies, the kind that sell you a product once, trade at 1 to 3 times revenue. Same industry, completely different valuation. The only real difference is whether customers keep paying after the sale. That gap isn't academic. It's the reason every major company in the last decade has been trying to convert you from a buyer into a subscriber. Here's the clearest example of what that looks like in practice. In 2013, Adobe stopped selling Photoshop. Not literally, you could still use Photoshop, but they stopped selling you a copy you could own. Instead, they launched Creative Cloud, a monthly subscription. Pay every month, you get access. Stop paying, the software stops working. Investors initially panicked. Short-term revenue dropped during the transition, but within a few years, the logic became undeniable. Adobe's market cap in 2014 was roughly $36 billion. By 2021, it had crossed $269 billion. The software hadn't changed that dramatically. The pricing model had. Microsoft watched, then did the same thing with Office, same with Windows Server. Azure turned enterprise computing into a monthly bill. Microsoft's market cap in 2014 was around $300 billion. By 2024, it had crossed $3 trillion. Netflix took DVDs and turned them into a monthly charge. $30 billion in 2014, $381 billion in 2024. The pattern is identical across every one of these companies. The product didn't get better by some factor of 10. The revenue model changed, and the market paid accordingly. Now here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't just happening in software and entertainment. It spread into physical objects. Real things you hold in your hands. And this is where the ownership question stops being about streaming libraries and starts being about something more fundamental. In 2022, BMW started selling heated seat subscriptions in certain markets. The heating elements were already in the car. The wiring was already in the car. Everything required to heat the seat was physically present in the vehicle you had already purchased. But to actually use it, you needed to pay a monthly fee for a software unlock. That detail is worth sitting with. You bought the hardware. You own the metal, but the function is held hostage behind a recurring payment. BMW isn't alone. Tesla has software-locked performance features on vehicles. Owners of identical cars, same model, same year, same components, have different capabilities depending on whether they paid for the right software tier. Reports show Tesla has removed features from used vehicles after resale, meaning the car you bought can be functionally downgraded by a server-side decision you had no say in. This is the concept of software-defined hardware. The physical object is yours, the functionality is licensed, and those are two different things. To understand why this is legally possible, you need to know about something called the first sale doctrine. Under US copyright law, When you buy a physical copy of something, a book, a CD, a DVD, you own that copy. You can resell it, lend it, do whatever you want with it. The copyright holder's control over that specific object ends at the point of sale. But courts have repeatedly ruled that digital goods are different. When you buy a Kindle book, you're not acquiring a copy. You're being granted a license to access a file stored on Amazon's servers, under terms Amazon can modify. When you purchase a film on a digital storefront, same thing. The first sale doctrine, the legal foundation of ownership, largely does not apply to digital goods. Companies didn't discover this loophole by accident. They structured their transactions around it deliberately. This is why Sony could delete 1,300 titles from paying customers' libraries without a refund and be completely within their rights. The licenses they sold to their content partners expired. The licenses they sold to their customers expired with them. Nobody owned anything. The money just transferred. But the ownership erosion doesn't stop at digital goods. John Deere sells tractors that can cost over $500,000. When a tractor breaks down in the middle of a harvest, a farmer used to be able to diagnose and fix it themselves, or call an independent mechanic. That's no longer possible on modern Deere equipment. Deere's tractors run proprietary software. Diagnosing an error code requires Deere's own Service Advisor software and specialized hardware tools that are only available to authorized dealers. Not independent shops. Not the farmer who paid $500,000 for the machine. Only Deere's dealer network. A class action lawsuit alleged this created an illegal repair monopoly, costing farmers billions annually in inflated service costs and delays. In 2026, Deere settled for $99 million. But the fundamental lock remains. Apple does something similar with iPhones through a practice called parts pairing. Internal components, screens, batteries, cameras, contain unique serial numbers that the phone checks against Apple's database. Install a part that isn't Apple certified and your phone starts showing warnings. Battery health indicators disappear. Face ID stops working. The phone functions but degraded. Apple's argument, made directly to state legislators, is that parts pairing protects security and prevents counterfeit components. That's probably partly true. It also means Apple controls who can repair the product you paid for, ensuring that service revenue flows through Apple-authorized channels. The industry's defense, across both John Deere and Apple, follows the same logic. We're protecting you. Safety, security, quality. What they don't say is that protection also happens to generate billions in locked repair revenue and keeps customers from ever truly controlling what they paid for. Here's the part that rarely gets said clearly. The subscription economy isn't primarily a story about technology. It's a story about the structure of modern capitalism and where wealth accumulates inside it. Subscription businesses grew roughly 435% over the last decade. They've expanded about 4.6 times faster than the S&P 500. Companies with heavy recurring revenue command valuation multiples 2 to 3 times higher than comparable businesses that sell products outright. That premium has to come from somewhere. It comes from households. From monthly charges that individually feel minor. $4.99 here, $12.99 there, $9.99 for music, $14.99 for delivery. But stacked together, across entertainment, software, storage, fitness, insurance, and finance, they consume a growing share of income before any discretionary spending begins. Consumers used to buy products and eventually stop paying for them. A paid-off car, owned software, a DVD library. These were small but real stores of value, things that worked without a monthly invoice. That model, where purchases created assets rather than obligations, has been methodically replaced. Not because consumers demanded it, but because investors valued the replacement more. 100 years ago, a cartel called Phoebus gathered the world's major light bulb manufacturers in Geneva. They had a problem. Their bulbs lasted too long. Engineers had figured out how to build bulbs that burned for 2,500 hours. The cartel decided, formally and deliberately, to cap that at 1,000. They wrote it into their agreement. Members who made bulbs that lasted too long were fined. The goal was simple: shorter lifespan, more replacements, more revenue. That's planned obsolescence in its purest form. Artificially limit what you sell so the customer has to keep buying. What's remarkable is how little the underlying logic has changed. Adobe's 2013 move to Creative Cloud didn't shorten the software's life. It did something more elegant. It made continued access conditional on continued payment. The software could work forever. Your right to use it expires the moment you stop paying. John Deere didn't make worse tractors. They made tractors you can't fix without them. BMW didn't remove the heated seats. They just put the activation behind a paywall. The Phoebus cartel used engineering to extract more money from the same customer. The modern subscription economy uses software, licensing law, and financial incentives to do the same thing. The mechanism changed. The motive didn't. None of this means subscriptions are always a bad deal. For a lot of people, access to a streaming library for $15 a month genuinely beats buying individual DVDs. Cloud software gets updated continuously. Streaming is convenient. But convenience is not the same thing as a fair exchange. And the terms of that exchange were not set by consumers. They were set by the valuation models of venture capital and public equity markets, which discovered that turning buyers into subscribers is the single most reliable way to increase a company's worth. The result is a household economy where more income is pre-committed every month before any actual choice is made, where the things you own can be remotely downgraded, deleted, or gated, where buying something digital often means buying permission, not property, where the legal framework, the first sale doctrine, that once protected the rights of buyers largely doesn't apply to the transactions that now dominate daily life. The phrase, "you will own nothing," got turned into a political slogan. But stripped of the politics, it points at something real. Not that you'll literally own nothing, but that the economic architecture being built around everyday life is one where access replaces ownership, payment replaces settlement, and the companies providing access retain control in ways that previous generations of buyers never had to negotiate with. You're not just a customer anymore. You're a recurring revenue line, and the system was designed, very deliberately, to keep you that way.